Hello and welcome to World News on TVP World. I'm Marie Cato. Poland plans to train 100,000 military volunteers annually by 2027, Prime Minister Donald Tusk has said ahead of a cabinet meeting in Warsaw. The leader added that anyone interested in basic military training should be able to participate by 2026, with the program currently being consulted with the Ministry of Defense.
We must significantly boost our capacity so that anyone interested in military training can receive it. These voluntary boot camps focused on basic training will be 1 month long. Already today, anyone who chooses to voluntarily undergo a 1-month training receives a salary of almost €1,500, and it ends with swearing an oath. I have asked the Minister of Defense to increase the state's training capacity and, naturally, to make efforts to motivate those interested. But for us, the most important thing is that by 2026, anyone interested should be able to receive basic military training, which is a considerable undertaking, but I know it is achievable. By 2027, we will double the number of personnel in training, and I am only talking about basic boot camps, because this will also be supplemented with specialized training conducted in different manner related to the individual's profession and skills. As you know, the war in Ukraine has clearly shown that there is a need for a full range of specialists, especially when it comes to cutting-edge technologies, but also for civil defense specialists to deal with local threats. Therefore, by 2027, we will have the capacity to train 100,000 volunteers annually, and I am confident there will be no shortage of volunteers.
High-level talks between the US and Ukrainian delegations are underway in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. The discussions aim to repair strained ties between Washington and Kyiv following a dispute between their leaders in the Oval Office, as well as to revive the stalled minerals deal between the two countries. Since taking office, US President Donald Trump has increased pressure on Kyiv, leading to a public clash with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. In response, Washington has halted aid to Ukraine and temporarily paused intelligence sharing with Kyiv. However, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is leading the US delegation, confirmed that intelligence sharing has now resumed. The talks come just hours after Ukraine launched its largest drone attack on Russia since the start of the full-scale war.
Security guarantees, it's very important because we want that never this aggression never repeated in the future again. Of course, it's very important, but now we think it's necessary to discuss the most important how to start this process. And we're very open, and we want to have very constructive, deep, friend, partners conversation with our American partners.
As US-Ukraine talks on a potential ceasefire begin in Saudi Arabia, TVP World expert and former foreign policy advisor to the Speaker of the Ukrainian Parliament, Vera Konstantinova, emphasized that the negotiations must not come at the cost of weakening Ukraine's military capabilities.
In terms of supporting Ukraine's position, in terms of supporting Ukraine's efforts to have long-lasting peace, we need to have weapons, we need to have instruments to protect our children. So in these terms, I believe that we have a good start with our American partners in terms of understanding what is critical for Ukraine on this stage, at this stage of negotiation processes.
The European Court of Justice is calling Poland's 2021 constitutional court rulings an unprecedented rebellion. Under the previous conservative government, Poland's constitutional tribunal ruled that the ECJ had no authority over the country's judiciary, a decision that has fueled an ongoing legal battle with the EU. We now go live to our correspondent in Strasbourg, Kazimierz Łysiak.
Unprecedented rebellion, some strong words used by the Attorney General of the ECJ today, Dean Szpilman, when talking about the ruling of the Polish Constitutional Court from 2021. This ruling was made during the previous government of the Conservative Law and Justice Party in Poland. So it's no surprise that today the Centre Liberal ruling coalition has welcomed this opinion from the Attorney General.
Well, this is the opinion of the Attorney General of the Court of Justice of the European Union that we've been waiting for couple of years, actually. This is a very important opinion, and I suppose that the future verdict of the European Court of Justice will be in the same line, meaning that Polish Constitutional Court, led by Julia Przyłębska, was and still is not the independent and impartial court in the meaning of the European Union law.
The current Polish government is trying to reverse the decisions made by the previous conservative government, but it's no easy task. And to understand all of this a little bit better, we need to come back in time to 2016. That's when the Law and Justice Party, the then ruling party, made a set of legal changes to the Polish judiciary. One of these changes was concerning the Constitutional Court, essentially making it dependent on the party and removing checks and balances in Poland. This was a cause of a lot of controversy, not only domestically, but also in the EU. The European Union issued a set of penalties on Poland, and in 2021, the Constitutional Court, then tied directly to the Law and Justice Party, decided that the ECJ had no authority over the judicial changes in Poland. So all of this is now coming back, and the Attorney General has issued an opinion to the judges of the ECJ that this ruling of the Constitutional Court was in direct violation of the EU law. The ECJ judges now can agree or disagree with that recommendation, but they usually go along with it. So we will have to wait and see what their decision will be. For now, the Polish government hopes to make these changes to bring back the independence of the Polish courts, and their best shot will be with the upcoming presidential election in Poland in May. The current government has already proposed a set of changes to the judiciary, but it was not signed by the current president of Poland, Andrzej Duda, who hails from the conservative Law and Justice Party. So now the current government is hoping to elect its own president in May and to get these changes going. From Strasbourg, Kazimierz Łysiak, TVP World.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen told the European Parliament on Tuesday that, quote, this is a moment for peace through strength. She also described Europe's unity on security as unprecedented.
Peace in our union can no longer be taken for granted. We are facing a crisis of European security, but we know that it is in crises that Europe has always been built. So this is a moment for peace through strength. This is the moment for a common defense effort. And at the European Council, I saw a level of consensus on European defense which is not just unprecedented, but was completely unthinkable only a few weeks ago. There is a new understanding that we must think differently and act accordingly. We have started to mobilize Europe's massive resources, and in the coming weeks and months, more courage will be necessary, and other difficult choices await us.
We do not make empty promises when it comes to defence, and in the last month we have accelerated efforts to build Europe's defence, said European Council President Antonio Costa in Strasbourg. He emphasised the EU's pivotal moment amid rising geopolitical tensions and noted that recent decisions to invest in defence align with NATO's goals.
The European Union is living a defining moment. The sense of urgency is upon us. Geopolitical tensions have risen over the last weeks. Multilateralism is under enormous pressure, and so is the rules-based international order. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine entered its third year, and the threat it is representing has a wider implications for Europe and international security. This is exactly why last week the European Council took fast and ambitious decisions on defence and Ukraine. We are putting our money where our mouth is.
Another day of protests in Serbia has seen hundreds of people blockading the building of the public broadcaster in the capital, Belgrade. Activists say their blockade will continue for at least 22 hours. The protesters, mostly students, accused the TV network of being biased towards the country's President Alexander Vučić. In an appearance on Monday evening, he slammed the protests that have been going on since last November, when a roof collapse at the Novi Sad railway station killed 15. One of the reporters also called the student protesters a mob. Riot police used batons in an attempt to disperse the crowd, blocking the entrance to the broadcaster's building. Defense ministers and military leaders from 30 countries are meeting in Paris on Tuesday to discuss security assistance for Ukraine. The talks bring together European and NATO nations as they assess long-term support for Kyiv. Officials will focus on the future of military aid to Ukraine, as well as efforts to strengthen and modernize European defense capabilities. The Paris summit coincides with US-Ukraine talks in Saudi Arabia, where Washington's support for Kyiv is also under discussion. Rescue teams searching for a small aircraft that lost contact with air traffic control on Monday morning have found parts of the plane in Slovenia's Velika Planina area. However, the rest of the wreckage, including the cockpit, has yet to be located. There is no information on whether the pilots survived the crash.
Rescue teams are continuing the search for the plane that crashed in the mountains of Slovenia. They found some debris believed to be from the missing aircraft, although confirmation is still pending. The rescuers are pushing on with operations in the area despite challenging conditions.
Given the current weather conditions in the search area, the search is very challenging. A police helicopter was brought in to help in the morning, but due to poor weather, it was unable to assist us, so the search was conducted solely on foot.
Data from the online platform Flight Radar 24 suggests that the aircraft, a small Piper model, took off from Zagreb and vanished over Velika Planina shortly after 8 a.m. on Monday. The region is notorious for its hazardous weather and steep terrain, complicating the search. While the pilot remains unaccounted for, the search continues.
In an interview with TVP World, Danish MEP Anders Vistisen expressed confidence that Greenland will remain an autonomous part of Denmark. He also dismissed the idea that Greenland would be more prosperous under US control, as recently suggested by Donald Trump.
Of course, Greenland can have a debate of independence. It's not very realistic with the American sentiment that they will never be allowed fully independence with that strategic position in such a huge island with only 50,000 inhabitants. But if you look at how the US have treated their indigenous people, if you look at how they are treating their overseas territories, I think there is a very good case to be made that the Danish that keep Greenland as a part of the Danish kingdom have had a much better treatment. For instance, Greenland is overrepresented in the Danish parliament with 2 seats, where dominions as the US Virgin Islands or Puerto Rico doesn't have any representation in the American Congress and are not even allowed to vote as the president's elections.
Is NATO still the cornerstone of global security, or is it becoming increasingly obsolete? With tensions rising and alliances shifting, the role of NATO has never been more uncertain. In this episode of Warsaw Debate, experts like Janusz Reiter, Witold Repetowicz and Mateusz Kacperski discuss the future of the alliance, the challenges it faces, and whether Europe can continue to rely on NATO in an unpredictable world.
Sooner or later, the US will realize that NATO is in both sides' interest, but now we are not there. It will take some effort and with no success guarantees.
I believe that these moves that are made now by the administration of Donald Trump are made on the false assumptions that they can ally with Russia against China.
Our intelligence may be cancelled, our MRO, our logistics for American military equipment may be in danger and we may lose sovereignty. So in conclusion, I believe that we no longer can trust NATO and the United States as the grantor of safety for the NATO community.
With such tough questions being raised, can NATO adapt to the changing global landscape? Is Europe ready to take matters into its own hands? Warsaw Debate invites you to join the conversation and hear from the experts. Tune in tonight at 9:10 p.m. And that's a wrap for World News at 2 p.m. Thanks for joining us and stay tuned for more on TVP World. Goodbye.